So good morning and good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Goldsmiths. So thank you so much for joining the second event, AI and Society online seminar. Today's title seminar is Digital Archive, Space, Time, and Memory. So I am Tomoko Tamari. I'm a senior lecturer in the Institute for Creative and Cultural Entrepreneurship, Goldsmiths University of London. So I act as the chair for today's event. So before introducing our speakers, I'd like to mention a few housekeeping points. Unfortunately, our time is limited, so we won't have Q&A discussion with the floor. If you wish to direct your comments or questions to our panelists privately, you will find their profile information and contact detail via Eventbrite page. So in this seminar, the final speaker, Mr. Ichiro Isadaga, their presentation will be translated Japanese into English by automatic translation software. It provides subtitles at the bottom of your screen. So it will be a live practice of AI translation. So finally, please be aware that the event will be recorded in order to share with those who are not able to attend the event today. So the video will be posted on the Eventbrite page and also on the Institute of Creative and Cultural Entrepreneurship Goldsmiths blog. Yes, then now I think we can start event. The second AI and Society seminar explore how the digital archives impact on the notion of the archive. More specifically, we analyze how the computational techniques, such as artificial intelligence, influence or change our experience of meaning-making practice and art of memory. Focusing on relationship between space, time, and memory, we consider how digital archives change form of storage and time scale and impact on organizing and interpreting memories and narratives. In this exploration of Foucault's work on space, Stuart Eldon speculates that the meaning of the term espace in French has broader range of meanings than space. The meaning of espace for Foucault could include not only space, but also classification, segmentation, order, and exclusion. In this rendering, the term espace can be understood as a space not only for organizing objects, but also for classifying the knowledge, information, and memories. The close connection between space and memory is not new, since a technique of a classic mnemonic art of memory teaches us the space and the images play an important role in memorization. So this means that the space can work as a storage, recollection, and ordering memories. Coupling space and memory can be equivalent to means to order and the interpretation of things. There are, however, significant differences between space and ancient world and today's world. In ancient world, with less paper for note-taking or before the invention of printing, training, memorization was of importance. Unlike ancient people, we are contemporaries no longer need to acquire such skill. This is we have developed artificial memory devices. The development of digitalization and computational information technologies thinks about various formats of the externalization of memories, what Stigler called tertiary retention mechanism. Subsequently, advanced computational technology make it possible to store a tremendous volume of information. A perfect example is emergence of digital archives. Thanks to advent of digital computer technologies, the potential of archive of memory storage has developed and expanded into new possibilities. traditional archives can be understood as a space of temporal fixture of its object and the spatial ordering of them, quote, poem, and the preservation for remembrance. But digital archives provide various functions, multimedia experience, data engineering for easy access through a search engine, and liberation from temporal-spatial limitation. All these functions are realized by networking, navigating capacity within algorithmic systems. This algorithmic system can offer real-time searching for connections and patterns in the data. Here, Wendy Hu-Young Chan is claims very important. She conceives that, I quote, although artificial memory has historically combined the transitory with the permanent, the passing with the stable, the digital media complicates this relationship by making a permanent into enduring ephemeral. Hence, memory with its constant degeneration does not equal storage. The echoes Wolfgang Ernst, today's first speaker, he remarks, he conceives that traditional archives, which is permanent, I quote, permanent storage is being replaced by dynamic temporal storage. And David Berry also wrote, quote, a new dimension has been added to archive now that its velocity supports not just storage, but also innovation. So hence, unlike technical storage had linked to memory to space, the space of the digital archive is no longer a fixed and preserved entity, but it can be more flexible, mobile, and ephemeral. Consequently, there is no longer a static link between memory and space. Hence, for the digital network archives, space becomes less vital, and it becomes a time-critical networking communication. So everything is endlessly updating their time data. So this user-oriented data processing in turn enhances both creativity and chaos of digital archive trade as a new meaning-making generating device. So further, today's physical traditional archive space are increasingly being incorporated into computer graphics and the virtual realities. So they become hybrid space with actual and virtual. Virtual reality with its interactivity can particularly be one of the most effective faculty to create a new perceptual artificial space, such as contemporary museums. So virtual is real, but not actual, Rob Shields said. So modern virtual reality with artificial intelligence can simulate a likeness of physicality, materiality, and existentiality. It has ability to visually simulate actual world to create a feeling of real. It is often argued that different ambience of space can alter the sensory experience of the world. This suggests that haptic experience, which is based on interaction between the body and its environment, can shape the interpretation and perception of spaces. This raises the question, how the digital and the digital physical environment space act on people to influence their interpretation, meaning making, and memories. So here we need to consider how we can recapture our understanding of notion of the archive in general and the digital archives of today's, current or future implications of narrative formation through digital computational devices, systems such as AI. So these issues are important, not only media theorists, but also digital cultural practitioners. So having this in mind, we invite speakers, digital cultural professional, Mr. Professionals, cultural activist, Professor Hideo Watanabe, and Ms. Anju Niwata from the University of Tokyo, and Mr. Ichiro Hisadaga from Dainihon Printing Company Limited, and leading media theorist from Berlin, Professor Wolfgang Ernst from Humboldt University. So we'd like to also invite Professor Shunya Yoshimi from Tokyo University of Tokyo, and Professor Mike Featherstone from Goldsmiths University of London to join our discussion today, later. Right, okay. So the first speaker is Professor Wolfgang Ernst. So he is full professor for media theories at the Institute for Musicology and Media Science at Humboldt University in Berlin. His current research covers radical media archaeology as method, the theory of technical storage, the technologies of cultural transmission, microtemporal media as aesthetics, and their chronopoetic potentials, and sounds analytics, so-called sonicity, from a media epistemological point of view. Most recent book in English, Technologos in Being, Radical Media Archaeology and the Computational Machine. So his paper title is Where Archival Memory Takes Place, the Media Epistemic Challenges of Technical Storage and their, bracket, entanglement with human remembrance. Okay, I pass the microphone to you, Professor Ernst.
Yes, hello everybody. First of all, thank you to Moko Tamari for the initiative of this workshop and for the very substantial and thought-inspiring introduction which you gave and to which my paper will somehow refer. To avoid a misunderstanding from the beginning, I would like to differentiate between the old meaning of archive, the institutional archive, and the archive which emerges from within computing. In non-metaphorical terms, and the term archive has become very metaphorical for all kinds of memory nowadays, well, the traditional archive is a legal memory of administrative power and its operating systems. We may call it an aggregation of files, records that can be linked via the archive's index, the inventory, to the discursive loops of institutions and other infrastructures. This is the old institutional archive. The traditional archive has been disclosed by historians mostly, but electronic memories, on the other hand, require data archaeologists rather than archivists. Since computer technology was made for information processing, not for long-term storage. Looking at data banks from the archivist's point of view may even be a hindrance in understanding the different nature of technological memory. The 21st century is developing as an epoch beyond the archive, I would say. With data streaming and network-based communication, the perspective shifts. The privilege accorded in Western civilization to certain permanent cultural values, memories, traditions from the past, so to say the cultural read-only memory, like the pieces of architecture 2000 years old. Increasingly, this gives way to dynamic exchange, a permanent transfer in the most literal sense. Traditional archives will, I think, retroactively remain like isolated islands, or as Michel Foucault expressed it, like heterotopies, like other spaces or even counter spaces, resistant against the dynamic reorganization, the permanent reformulation of memories. The emerging regime of what is called digital archives, which I would not like to call archives at all, so to say, well, this transforms the conventional notion of the archive indeed. In a media archaeological reformulation, the technical l'archive, to say it in French, in Foucault's words, challenges the cultural institution of the archive. When being confronted with the technical materialization of Cartesian objects, which are mathematical things, don't forget, you are looking at me, but I'm a mathematical thing at this very moment, because I am being computed at this very moment. I'm a Cartesian object. I'm not a human image for you at this moment. And that's why media archaeology describes the non-discursive practices specified in the element of the techno-cultural archive, which should not be confused with the actual records office, which is a different kind of memory institution. By defining what Foucault calls l'archive, not to be confused with French les archives, which are the state archives. What Foucault defines as l'archive is a chapter in his Archaeology of Knowledge. It's a completely different meaning, shifting the analytic focus from memory repositories to the governing laws of data circulation as such. A return of the ancient arche, the old Greek word, the kernel of the term archive is the arche, which does not only mean beginning, but commandment, as Jacques Derrida reminded in his book, Archive Fever. So archive, arche now is rather about protocols, commandments, command lines in programming computers. It's not about ancient beginnings or memories of the past. Foucault's very distinctive use of the term l'archive does not refer to the totality of all received documents, maybe in the World Wide Web, nor to its bureaucratic institution, but more abstracted to the systems which govern the emergency and the processing of enunciation. So if you want to look and to know the digital archive, look at the command lines of a source code. When Foucault's neographism of l'archive is media archaeologically applied to the technological condition, l'archive deals with the hardware configurations and data transfer protocols. So again, it's about an operative computing present. It's not about the past. L'archive is the diagram that formalizes processes, its tectonics as an active rather than passive agency of storage and transfer of signals and symbols. The technical act of archivization produces as much as it records the event. Archivologically, to say it like this, a computational memory is rather prospective than retrospective. So when we talk about the digital archive, we are talking about a completely different temporality. It's not about the past. It is such techno-archival rules that govern what kind of digital memory can be expressed and retrieved at all. And in computer, data are retrieved. They are not remembered, which makes a big difference between the human and the computational memory. It is not only human archivists anymore, but in a higher degree than ever, it is technologies upon which the readability of such documents depends. The familiar archival record, which is text for most cases, has become techno-mathematically sublime because we cannot read it. Humans cannot read the new techno-archival records anymore. Not directly. They are there, but in a sublime way. They remain in electromagnetic latency. They are there, but not directly accessible to human senses anymore. In contrast to the traditional notion of archives as record depositories, l'archive, in Foucault's sense, is a hidden agency within the Turing machine itself, being defined by its constraining laws or algorithm. But even the conventional archive returns within computer architecture when a core element in the central processing unit is called the register. This is an old archival science term borrowed now for computing. Just like the secret archives in previous times and empires, this regime now is hidden from the public human user interface, as, for example, the protected mode in programmed computer chips. Archival enlightenment nowadays means unlocking this techno archive. Let us now discuss archival space versus techno-mathematical topologies. Since this seminar is particularly focusing on the relationship between space and memory, I would say more important might be time and memory, but this is another question. This relation of space and memory is fine for human and body-centered analysis, but within the computational sphere, the archival space, l'espace de l'archive, as expressed by Michel de Certeau, is replaced by mathematical topology. So we are not dealing with space anymore. Even cyberspace is not space, it's a mathematical topology. And the computational matrix as a number arrangement has replaced the old notion of space. So I think even the word space has become metaphorical to describe the computational archival reality. This coincides with the contemporary online media culture as it has been analyzed by Foucault, quote from his text, Other Spaces. We are at a moment when our experience of the world is less that of a long life developing through time than that of network. Just like Foucault's neographic definition of l'archive contrasts with the old idea of the archive, the institutional archive, his understanding of the term space in French has a broader sense than space, and rather extends to classification, segmentation, order, and exclusion. Such a space, in quotation marks, not only organizes archival records, but the digital present as such. In that sense, our communication, even now in this webinar, is governed by archival rules in this technological sense. Digital topologics, I would call it, change forms of storage and timescale indeed. But a media archaeology as cultural analytics or science rather explores the technical ground of such transformations with a focus of what is not narrative. Data-based memory cannot tell, but only count and compute. The algorithmic data retrieval system rather offers real-time recognition of connections and patterns in the data than remembrance of a past. Even the word remembrance does not apply to computational retrieval functions. Time and space are disentangled by the technical act of storage. Since the archival record is not alphabetic letters on paper anymore, but big data on magnetic tape, to use an old memory medium. And this changes even the temporal relation. The close coupling of space and memory in traditional Western and Eastern cultures is the legacy of ancient cultural techniques, the mnemonic art of memory, where locative images have an operational function in human memorization processes. Computer memory, and I write this in quotation marks, though does not require such imagination. Computer memory does not require any image. and rather operates with geometrization and operative diagrammatics. So there are significant differences between artificial memory in the ancient world, the art of memory, and that of today's media culture indeed. According to Francis Yates, Cartesian analytics and his analytic geometry in 17th century killed the image-centered ancient rhetorical art of memory in favor of algebraic numerical operations. The museum-like alliance between the ordering of memory and the sense of sight has since been abstracted in and as computation. Already the technologizing of the word, like what I say to you now, by the phonetic alphabet in ancient Greece displaced the oral memorization skills into coded storage, which we call the alphabet, which as symbolic order is memoryless in itself. The medium for our archival traditional records, the alphabet, is completely memoryless itself. The development of digitalization and computational information technologies brings about various formats for the externalization of memories, what late Bernard Stiegler once called tertiary retention mechanism. But advanced computational technologies are not simply technical extensions of human memory, but operational transformations of remembrance into storage technologies. So I'm taking not the phenomenological, but the media archaeological point of view. Memory, quotation marks, for the Turing machine is simply an endless tape. This algorithmic mechanism actually concerns the memory technology. Obviously, Alan Turing borrowed his thought experiment from a real writing technique, the mechanical typewriter. Only the mechanization of handwriting by the typewriter and the material interference of the typing lever, which separated the human hand from writing, allowed for a new form of active forgetting, as has not been known before in the tradition. And there has been the ancient recording medium of the wax tablet, which even if you erase the inscription, always preserves the traces of erasure itself. A famous metaphor for Sigmund Freud's piece on the magic writing pad. But the erasure of a letter by typing it again, which is a sort of destructive memory act, through the interpolation of another medium, can be demonstrated with the typewriter here. And, yeah, I quickly now show you how it works. So this is a very radical way of demonstrating that how technical media memory works. By writing the same letter again, you erase the letter and can replace it by another letter, something which could never happen with human remembrance, where subconsciously the traces always exist. Today's physical archive spaces are increasingly being incorporated into computer graphics and virtual realities, such as in the so-called digital museums. They become hybrid spaces in a precise sense, because there is two levels: the electromagnetic latency on what Frieda Nake would call the subphase, the inner side of computer, And there is the visual or audio-visual evidence on the optical interface. Now we come here to the question, how actual is this reality? From a media archaeological point of view, even the virtual, the data space, something which we call born digital, is as actual as it could be in technical terms, with its voltages and hardwired circuitry. There is never passive storage in computing. It has always to be on wire. It's always being processed. It's regenerated, reiterated, as Wendy Chun would say. This is the dynamic. There is no static memory anymore within computing once you switch it on. And with the end of the art of memory by the algebraic code, there cannot even be a musée imaginaire, an imaginary museum anymore, because there is no imaginary in computer memory. There is the real, which would be the physical voltage, for example, and there is the symbolic, which is the address structure of computer memory. There is no imaginary. So we should not remain on the surface level. While the ars memoria memory, the art of memory, took place mainly visually, in the Cartesian and computational epoch, its location becomes arithmetic, which results in a technical operation. For example, the so-called memory allocation in computing, such as random access memory. And in the von Neumann architecture of stored program computation, which we all use nowadays, it is usually the operating system which takes care of memory management. So it's part of the operative present. It's not separated into a heterotopic past, which refers both to stored data and the instructions to fetch them. In principle, they are located in the same so-called memory. In the treatise on the art of memory, the images were still located spatially, but this architectural location now within computer architecture, how is it called, returns and is displaced by alphanumeric addresses. Searching images, for example, is not visual anymore or imaginary, but exact addressing the so-called images as two-dimensional data matrix down to the last pixel. The logocentristic subjection of images by verbal metadata is replaced by hashing, that is the immediate addressing of the storage cell content itself. The artificial neural net approach of deep machine learning, how is it called, once starting with Frank Rosenblatt's perceptron, radically differs from the logocentristic transcription of signals into semantic metadata, archival metadata. Once a human is cybernetically coupled to media machines, he or she is subject to their temporalities. But while cultural analysis asks somewhat anthropocentrically how the digital environment acts on people to influence their encounter with objects and their memories, media archaeology shifts attention to the hidden agencies which predetermine such encounters and meaning making from within the machine. And in its radical formulation of what I call the technologos hypothesis, media archaeology dispenses with cultural centrism when we talk about memory. And I replace it by the more precise storage. I speak about storage and not about memory. Storage solutions in electronic computing, such as the ultrasonic early memory delay line, have not been invented to model human memory. Rather, engineers such as K.T. Sharpless in the early days of electronic computing even apologized for using that term by typing it in inverted commas, memory. He excused because he said this is already a metaphor when we come to describe the digital reality. The storage of information, often called memory in large-scale computing machines. He says so-called memory. In John von Neumann's design for stored program electronic computer, as I say, we still use this, his rather metaphorical terminology of memory organ in inverted commas already vanished in favor of the cybernetic human machine system theory. But we still always should be remembered this was a metaphorical application of words. So to put it radically, there is no memory in computation. And I think I have 2 or 3 minutes. I come then here to my closing part. From the media archaeological viewpoint, the traditional archive becomes deconstructed by the dynamics of digital online techniques. While down to the European Renaissance, the mnemotechnical art of memory has linked memory to space, as it is in the case with the traditional archives. Nowadays, permanent storage is becoming liquid in electronic circulation. And the rigid link between memory and space is disrupted. The reading-only paradigm in archival space, the read-only memory, is being superseded by a generative, participative form of archival decoding. And this cannot be narrativized. Non-narrative computation suspends cultural memory as investigated by cultural studies from its premature semantization in favor of an operative formalism. Do I have 1 more minute? Then I read my last page in a traditional script, which I have here, as you see. And remind of philosopher Hegel, because I speak here in the house, in the space where once philosopher Hegel's house in Berlin was there, destroyed in the Second World War. This is our media theater. In his philosophical encyclopedia, Hegel already clearly distinguished between external memory techniques and mechanical storage on the one hand, and psychically interiorized remembrance, something which now deep neural nets try to imitate by big data training, but technically it is still all about storage, intermediary storage. Even a neural net cannot remember. It's just a remetaphorization of a human use. And the embedding of remembrance in biological or bodies or physical materiality gets lost when it is reduced to an operational memory administration. And so my real last words, so far, the actual technologies of emulating human intelligence and human memory processes have been drastically different from the neural brain network itself. But beyond symbolical artificial intelligence, artificial neural nets approach the human psychic apparatus itself. But returning to the epistemic premise of cybernetics and to Turing's theory of the computational mind, the modeling of human signal processing by algorithmic machines does not simply result in an emulation of the human mind or memory, but in reverse, media actively reveals the human mind as neural mechanism itself. From the cybernetic artificial intelligence perspective, not only machine storage, but even human memory has been artificial, that is technological from the beginning. So thank you for your attention, and we will later all discuss. Hmm?
Thank you very much. Very fascinating paper, Professor Ernst. Thank you very much. That's really great. So from viewpoint media archaeology, what struck me in his paper is about memory. Computer doesn't have a memory. I think what makes me think about it, we are talking about technology, always technology take from a human in terms of like a tacit knowledge or embodied knowledge. So how we can sort of code it our emotion, how we can code it our feeling. It's a part of a big challenge of AI system, or sort of working cybernetically connect machine and human. The next paper is actually, well, yes, I think Professor Ernst said there is a sort of important distinction between what Professor Ernst talked about. This is the archaeology, archive in the general sort of conceptual level. Was now second paper is very much different, more like institutional, or let's say, if you like, institutional or archive story. And speakers, I can introduce you, Professor Hidenori Watanabe and Miss Anju Niwata. Hidenori Watanabe, he is a professor at the Graduate School of University of London. He researches...
No, University of
University of Tokyo, sorry, University of Tokyo. And he researched the ideal way of inheritance of memory of information design and the design archives. He has produced digital archives such as the Hiroshima archive and Nagasaki archive, which was placed the atomic bomb affected area. And the last moments of tsunami disaster victim. This is Japan's Great North earthquake of Fukushima. And he began coloring black and white photographs by AI technologies in 2016 and has been working on the rebooting memories project in cooperation with Niwata-san, Anju Niwata, since 2018. His works were selected in ARS, Electronica, and the Japan Media Arts Festival. And Anju Miwata, Miss Anju Miwata, she was born in Hiroshima, Japan in 2001. And she's a secondary student at the University of Tokyo and practices and researched the space of peace education. So since 2017, he met former residents of Nakajima district. This is a Hiroshima Peace Memorial Park area. She became involved reboosting memory activities. So organized reboosting memory exhibitions and make a short film, and also developed augmented reality application with Professor Watanabe. And most recently, both co-authored book published. The title is Reboosting Memory of Pre-War and War Through Colorized Photographs in collaboration with AI and human. And she also awarded quite a lot, United for Peace Film Festival and the Foreign Minister Award at the Peace Contest or UN Association of Japan, and the President Award for student in University of Tokyo. And most recently, Watanabe Sensei and Anju got the award, Hiroshima Book Award. Okay, and next, the title, their paper title is Reboosting Memories, Pre-War, War Through Colorized Photograph in collaboration with AI and human. Okay, I hand over microphone to you both.
Okay. So, hello everyone. Today I'd like to talk about the activities of rebooting memories. I'm Hidenori Watanabe, a professor at the University of Tokyo. The second half of our talk will be given by Ms. Anju Niwata, a second-year student at the University of Tokyo. We'll be collaborating for 4 years long when she was a high school student. First, let me show you the showcase of our activity. This photo was shot in Japan more than 100 years ago. Let's colorize it. The colors of the people and the scenery emphasize the difference between the still background and the moving people. Next is a very famous photo. You know, Anne Frank in 80 years ago, 1941. And of course, you know, her sad fate. Let's colorize it. Don't you feel close to her as if she is a girl in present time, 21st century? Here is a final example. The Hiroshima atomic bomb cloud was shot from Kure. Kure is neighbor city of Hiroshima in 76 years ago. Let's colorize it. That's right. On that day, the sky over Hiroshima was clear, blue. It is no different from the blue sky we see today. It becomes easier to feel that the past every day was not different from the present. Okay. This is a strategy of rebooting memories project. Stocked black and white photographs can be a trigger of flow by colorization and sharing, and lively communication emerges from the flow, increases the value of information. Therefore, the activity passes precious materials and memories of past events into the future. Okay. Kevin Kelly said, modern society discovered the value of flow creation through appropriate information design and sparking communication, in addition to the stocked original data itself. This is an example of flow. It's my Twitter timeline. As you know, we don't search anymore. We take in information that flows into the timeline. Okay. However, many photos are still stocked in digital archives. They are example of this archive. We cannot access these photos without searching. Is it possible to create a flow by sharing them on Twitter? Let's observe this flow again. Color photo, color photo. So current color photos posted on social media timelines provide simultaneity, not black and white photo. On the other hand, so frozen impression of black and white photos will auto freeze the timeline in the user's awareness. Colorizing black and white photos can prevent this freezing and reboot the impression of the events shown in the photo. Based on this awareness of the issue, we began colorizing black and white photos in December 2016 using the AI technology, for example, developed by Iizuka and Shimosera, that gives color to black and white photos automatically by AI technology. This is the result of automatic colorization. The input image size is reduced, and most important point is the artifacts in the photographs are colorized unnaturally. This is limitation of AI technology. So we restored the resolution and also retouched the photos by hand based on the historical materials. See, yes, it's very important part. It is an example of AI and human collaboration, bringing the colors closer to a more natural impression by human work. This is an example of a flow on Twitter created from the colorized photo. There's a massive response from users, with the photo being retweeted or liked over 1,000 times and receiving many replies by users, showing that lively communication has emerged in the flow on Twitter with the colorized photos as the starting point. So I have one question here. What day is today? It is now the evening of October 20 in Japan time. This is a photo taken 80 years ago today. Let's colorize it. Very famous battleship, yes. This is the day of test voyage of the battleship Yamato, 80 years ago today. I tweeted this photo in this morning. Already, the photo has been retweeted and liked, and also it has received many replies. I'm tweeting colorized photos under the subject photo of the day. By tweeting colorized photos from that day, the reality of past events is enhanced. The tweets are perceived as pseudo-real-time news by users. From November 2016, I have tweeted over 1,000 colorized photos. Let's look at an example of a flow that emerged on Twitter. As you know, this is the original black and white photo of the atomic bomb cloud, and the AI has not learned the mushroom cloud color. The AI colored the photo like a normal white cloud. Okay. I tweeted this colorized version in December 2017, and Mr. Sunao Katabuchi, the director of the animation movie In This Corner of the World, replied on Twitter. He said the mushroom cloud was pink and also pointed out, especially the upper part was orange by nitrogen dioxide. I retouched it based on his comments. This was the version up to last year. And I tweeted it again on August 6th, the memorial day of the atomic bombing of Hiroshima in last year. And surprisingly, Katabuchi replied to me again. And he said, the mushroom cloud is made of 2 colors. Wow. So based on his comments, I retouched it again. This is the latest version. The red cloud at the top was directly generated from the atomic bomb, and the lower black part rose up from the burned Hiroshima city. From the flows on the internet, dialogues with experts were generated, and the color accuracy was improved, and the quality of information was increased. So let me tell a short story of this photo of Hiroshima. I found it in 2016 at Wilmington College in the United States. All I knew was that it was taken in Hiroshima 1 year after the atomic bombing. I tweeted this colorized version as a photo of 72 years ago today on August 6th in 3 years ago, 2018. This tweet had the highest response ever. many information was received from users, including a journalist and a TV station. From the flow of the colorized photo, these facts were revealed. First, Kyodo News Service took the photo before August 5th, 1946. This couple may be guests of a dance hall that had already opened in this department store. And the new building seen above the heads of the couple is a ryokan. Ryokan is traditional Japanese inn, which exists today as a restaurant. Wow. So based on the information, we were able to visit the place where the photo was taken. And so this hand is Andrew's hand. The colorized photo and the present cityscape of Hiroshima are superimposed. It's like a time machine. And we also could visit this Japanese inn. Now it is a restaurant. We enjoyed dinner and conversation with the owner. The owner was very happy and told us an old story about this restaurant. In this example, a flow in Twitter has created communication in real space. Impressive story. And I have described only the story through 2019, 2 years ago. The rest of the story will be explained in Andrew's presentation. To be continued to Andrew's presentation. In July of last year, we published a book of colorized photos summarizing the results of our project. This book also creates flow in real space. The details of the couple's photo I referred to were found in the flow of real space emerged from the book. The story will be also explained by Andrew in her presentation. Let's review what we discussed. Stocked black and white photographs can be the trigger of the flow by colorization and sharing, and lively communication emerges from the flow, increases the value of information. Therefore, the activity passes precious materials and memories of past events into the future. I have mainly talked about rebooting memories on the internet. Next presentation is a story of Andrew's activities in real spaces. This story began 4 years ago when she was a high school student in Hiroshima. Okay, let's start your presentation, Andrew.
Good morning and good afternoon. I'm Aji Niwata from the College of Art and Science in the University of Tokyo. I'm very grateful for joining this program and giving me the opportunity to talk about rebooting memories activity today. And I will share my screen. Can you see my slide? Okay.
It looks good.
Okay,
Yes.
okay.
Since I was a high school student, I've worked on the rebooting memories activity. So from now on, I will introduce you what the activity is. So to maintain the internet connection, I will take my video off during my presentation. Sorry. Please look at this photo. This was taken in pre-war Hiroshima 83 years ago. Then I colorize it. How do you feel and what can you imagine? Today, I'm going to talk on this map. First of all, what is rebooting memories? This activity aims to inherit war survivors' thoughts and memories with our empathy into the future by colorizing black and white photos from the pre-war era to an era in the immediate aftermath of the war. I always explain the purpose of the activity and ask the war survivors to provide their own photos. The way to colorize the monochrome photos is to make use of AI technology and based on past documentary records and the dialogue with war survivors. Rebooting memories activity may stand for the collaboration with AI and human. I'd like for many people to imagine the peaceful lives in pre-war era suddenly lost by the war as something belonging to one's own experience and spark the conversation on war survivor thoughts and memories in a present community. Let me begin with my research question. I was born and brought up in Hiroshima. As you know, Hiroshima is the first city to experience the atomic bombing, but was reconstructed. 76 years have passed since the War II ended. The war survivors are aging year by year, and we are the last generation to learn from them directly. In addition, they are barely able to talk their own experience as a long time goes by. However, for most of the young people who have never experienced war, it is just a past event and tend to be grasped as something not related to ourselves. Then, how can people who have never experienced a war pass on the thoughts and memories of the war survivors into the future? In 2017, in the summer, at the Hiroshima Peace Memorial Park, I came across Mr. Hamai Tokuso. Actually, this picture shows himself and his older brother in front of the building named the A-bomb Dome today. Mr. Hamai once lived in the Nakajima district, which existed under the ground of the present Peace Park. There were many stores, theaters, restaurants, and so on. About 4,400 people lived normal, everyday lives as we do today. His father ran a barber shop, and we can see his family in the anime movie in this corner of the world. Although he could survive because of evacuation, all his family members died in the atomic bombing. 1 week after the meeting with Mr. Hamai, I learned colorization from Professor Watanabe. In addition, Mr. Hamai brought his family album, including many monochrome photographs, when he recorded his testimony. He has cherished the album since he lost his family without saying goodbye. Then it came into my mind that I presented a colorized photo album to Mr. Hamai because it will help him feel closer to his loving family. Seeing the colorized photos, Mr. Hamai seemed to be very happy and said, "It's really beautiful, just like yesterday. They seem to be alive. I remember the day just like yesterday. We held the cherry blossoms viewing here. So the color of the flowers is pink. Oh, I often used to play Japanese cedar cannons." He recalled his new memory in succession, so I manually recolored the photo based on his color of the memory. I've repeated dialogue with war survivors based on the colorized photos and the recolorization many times. I have promoted rebooting memories activity, cooperating with more than 10 former citizens of Nakajima district and war survivors in other regions. Mr. Takahashi, the owner of this photo, had dementia. This photo was colorized by AI. Firstly, I thought these flowers were surely white clovers, so I turned the whole yellow tone down and got close to the white color. However, I visited Mr. Takahashi and talked with him and his daughter, seeing the colorized photos. He suddenly remembered and said, "They were dandelions." and he began to talk about precious memories with his family, whom he lost in the bombing. So I recolored based on his color of the memory. Thanks to like-minded supporters, I could put my thoughts into shape, like making the video on the United for Peace Film Festival, holding some colors photographs exhibitions, participating in some international conferences, developing an air app, and publishing the photo collection, collaborating with colors photos and music, and various media. I made a short movie about rebooting memories, cooperating with Mr. Yamaura Tetsuya, who belonged to Professor Watanabe's laboratory. This won the student award, and we were invited to the United Nations in New York. We were very honored to get the opportunity to screen the movie and make a speech at Product Plus in 2018. This has been released on YouTube, so please have a look after the forum. Next, about this book. As Professor Watanabe told you before, when open this colors photo book, you can find this photo. A young couple has looked over the ruins of the atomic bombing from the roof of the building. On August 5th, 1946, why was the couple here and who are they? Some questions about them had remained until publishing the book. According to Professor Watanabe, he colorized it based on his thought that this photo symbolizes the reconstruction of Hiroshima and represents hope for a bright future. And based on color photo took by United American military. Soon after the book was published, Mr. Kawaue Kiyoshi, who is now 91 years old, came forward to say that the man is himself and the woman is Ms. Katayama Yuriko. She actually became his wife, and to our surprise, some photos in the book are related to her. The left is a woman's family, and the right shows a woman and her brothers. I went to visit Mr. Kawaue many times to interview him and get closer to his color of memory. Seeing this colorist photo, he said, I asked the photographer to send me the photo telling my address, but his wish couldn't come true. He continued, so I was very surprised when I opened the book and found this picture. The ruins of the atomic bombing were likely smoking and more darker than this. He also noted that the couple was not looking out with hope, but staring at their homes and grieving over the friend's death. Based on the dialogue with him, I manually recolorized and represented his color of the memory. Unfortunately, his wife Yuriko had passed away last spring. Mr. Kawaue told me that, though she couldn't see this photo, she would surely cry for joy seeing these colorless photos. Through these episodes, I have revived war survivors' color of memory through dialogue with war survivors by seeing colorized photos. Finally, I will tell you about the collaboration with colorized photo and music.
ビルね、75年待って、ね、帰ってきたところ見るとやっぱり。
Last year, I took part in the gathering of the testimony with Mr. Hamai. The gathering has been held on the 6th every month by a singer-songwriter who was born and brought up in Hiroshima. I talked with him that we are going to collaborate music with colorless photos someday. And this summer, I cooperated with him, a respected pianist and a filmmaker, to complete one song and a music video. This was my first time to read the lyrics based on Mr. Hammer's story and to join in the chorus. Please listen to the song on YouTube. Under the pandemic, we tend to think we cannot do anything because of coronavirus, but we should have a rethink on what we can do for realizing a peaceful world even in this difficult situation. I'd like to make people feel the war survivors' thoughts and memories through touching their five senses. For instance, we can listen to the music on YouTube anytime and anywhere. By joining in the conference online easily, and visiting some exhibition. For instance, in the Hiroshima Rest House on the third floor, we can see our colorist photographs. And downloading the AR app, we can have a time thinking about peace and imagine what the war took away from all the people. And then we can share your feeling with our family, friends, and anybody. After the pandemic, we can freely visit Hiroshima. When walking around the Peace Park, we can use the AR app and overlaying the maps of present and past. You will surely realize the breathing of the former citizens' lives and use our imagination more than only seeing the colors photos on your smartphone. In conclusion, I'd like to tell you that these media lead to form the educational space for peace pedagogy in our society. I think the educational space for peace pedagogy is widely open, not only in the classroom, but also in the various spaces. These various media space may offer the sustainable or permanent peace pedagogy into the future. I'll bring my ideas into practice, making use of art, technology, music, and broaden the circle of educational space for peace pedagogy. Next year, I'll belong to the Faculty of Education, so I'd like to deepen the meanings of rebooting memories activity, not only practicing, but also from the viewpoints of synesthesia and memory studies. That's all. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Professor Hidenori Watanabe and Ms. Anju Niwata. Maybe you can close the, yes, okay, thanks very much. Yes, it's really thank you for demonstrating Hiroshima memory. I mean, the Hiroshima memory is not just for Japanese people. This is for humanity. So really important stuff. It's interesting to do sort of thinking about Professor Ernst's discussion. He talking about the immanent mechanism of computational technology, and this can contribute to digital archives and point out its ephemeral property. But this is a completely different sort of field of AI. Professor Watanabe and Miss Anju Niwata, the paper. It seems to bring like a rather different element of artificial intelligence and its relationship with human memories. So digital archive, you are sort of producing aimed at keep human memory for future generation, not ephemeral, future generation. And the core goal of their project, your project, is making site-specific memories and not being temporal, ephemeral, but rather rediscover, reinforce its existence. So that's a very interesting contrast, thinking about understanding or utilize artificial intelligence. Thank you very much. Other things is maybe we can talk to later discussion. Right, I think move to next final speakers. Mr. Ichiro Hisanaga is head of Human Engineering Lab, Marketing Division, Dainihon Printing Company Limited. Since the mid-1990s, he was being involved in the spatial design of museum, art museum, corporate museum, and libraries. And he has also been involved in the development of interactive systems for utilizing digital materials. He has expanded his interest ergonomics to cognitive science and psychology, and engaged in the system design of the interactive spatial experiences. So since 2010, he has been in charge of digital archive project in the new marketing division of Dainihon Printing Company Limited. So today he will introduce two projects he is involved in. Apart from these two, he also developed Oxford University Bodleian Library Exhibition Project and Qatar AI Zabala Archaeological Guidance Project, and so on, so many projects here. And his paper title is Memory Palace in Virtual Reality, Human Cognitive Ability and the Computer Interface Experience in Museum and Libraries. So please start your presentation, Mr. Hisanaga, please.
Thank you.はい、私は日本語でプレゼンテーションをします。皆さん、右下のボタンを押して字幕を表示してください。
Just to say, this presentation, translate in Japanese into English by automatic translation system. Maybe could you click icon on the bottom of the screen, live transcript. You can see the bottom of the screen, and switch on view full transcript. Is it correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
はい、では、記憶の宮殿というタイトルで、DNP ミュージアムラボの活動を紹介します。私たちは、これまでルーブル美術館やフランス国立図書館と一緒に、イメージリテラシー教育のデジタル化ということに取り組んできました。今、最も新しいプロジェクトは、フランス国立図書館のリシュリュー・ルネサンスというプロジェクトで、その中で、記憶の宮殿について研究を始めています。特に宮殿を作るというダイレクトなことではなくて、知識に形を与えるとどうなるのか、それから仮想空間で記憶を操作することができるのかということを、実験しています。まずはルーブル美術館のプロジェクトを簡単にご紹介します。ルーブル美術館と DNP は2005年に共同プロジェクトを始めました。お互いの持っているリソースを持ち寄って、全く新しい美術体験を開発してみようというプロジェクトです。これまでに、10回の展覧会を開き、約100のデジタルコンテンツを作ってきました。あまり皆さんがご存知でないと思うんですが、それは日本ですごく小さな場所でやっていたので、ヨーロッパの方はあまりご存知ないと思います。とても変な役になりましたね。例えばどんなものを作ったか、映像をご覧いただきます。動きませんね。動かないので飛ばします。少し変わったプロジェクトだったのでご紹介します。通常、コンピューターヒューマンインターフェース、私の、携わっている分野でいくと、コンピューターと人間の間を設計する。特に、使いやすくする、分かりやすくする、気持ちいい、楽しいっていうのがテーマになります。 ただ、このルーブルのプロジェクトは、マルチメディアの存在を感じさせない、これをテーマにしてほしいということでスタートしました。それから、扱う内容についても下にありますけれども、教えるのではなく気づかせる、気づきをどうやって提供するかというのがテーマになっています。それを実現するためにデジタル化、あるいはデジタルアーカイブというのを活用してきました。これはエジプトの部門の展示をするときにやった事例です。左上にある通り、まず展示されている、古代の遺物を 3D のデジタルスキャンをします。で、得られたデータから CG を起こします。で、CG から、先ほど渡辺先生もやられてたこと、我々は AI はここでは使えませんでしたけれども、少し上に出していますけれども、当時の色合いっていうのが分かっている場合には、デジタル復元という形で、例えば金箔が施されていると、こういう遺物でしたというのを、再現したりします。で、この時は、そうではなくて、右側に行きますけれども、欠けている部分をデジタルの中で形を戻す、あるいは折れてしまっている、離れてしまっているものをデジタルの中で接続するというデジタル修復ということをやります。で、修復されたデータを元にして 3D プリンターでプリントをして模型を作ります。で、この模型を使ってタンジブルユーザーインターフェースといって、コンピューターを操作しているという意識をあまり感じさせないインターフェースを作っていきます。もちろん模型だけではタンジブルユーザーインターフェースは実現しないので、画像認識技術、非常に高度な画像認識技術を使いますし、ベースとなる心理学を活用して、鏡を使って人の心を騙すというふうなテクニックを使います。それから、ルーブル美術館から、この遺物についてどういうふうに気づいてほしいのかということで、エジプト美術っていうのは基本的に全て宗教に関わる遺物であるということ、それから人が使うということを分かってもらいたいというようなことがオーダーとして出されて、真ん中にあるようなインターフェースを作ります。で、これによって右側にあるイメージリテラシーとしては、何かエジプト美術のものを見つけたときに、これは一体何のために作られたんだろうって考えてもらえるようになるのが私たちのゴールになります。映像がうまく動くといいんですが、動かないね。動きましたね。こんな風にですね、手前の模型は何も出ていませんが、鏡の中の模型から煙が出ると。これ、斜めから撮影しているので少しずれているんですが、彼女の目からは、手に持っている模型から煙が出ているように見えています。で、こういうものを作って、役に立ったかどうかって検証しなければいけないので、私たちは様々な検証方法を試してきました。代表的なものをご紹介すると、これは画面の中に手が出てくる映像と、手が出てこない映像で人の興味が変わるのかというのを検証しました。上のラインと下のラインの映像を見て、右側に脳波計をつけている学生がいますけれども、脳波を測って、その脳の働きを計測します。そうすると、手が出てくる映像、手が出てこない映像で、ミラーニューロン、我々が狙った脳細胞が働いているかどうかっていうのが分かります。優位に差が出ます。でこれによって何が分かるかというと、ミラーニューロンを刺激しているということは、 その人が積極的にこの後どうなるんだろう、この手は何をしようとしているんだろうっていうことを、頭の中で一生懸命想像する。つまり、このコンテンツを一生懸命理解しようとするっていうことが言えるのではないかというふうな、検証をやりました。他にもいろいろな検証方法を試していますが、今日は短めに行きます。で、2つ目のプロジェクトは、フランス国立図書館です。フランス国立図書館のプロジェクトは、彼らが持っている地球儀と天球儀を、ものすごく高精細にデジタル化をするというプロジェクトをやりました。フォトグラメトリーという技術を使って、デジタル化をこの回は行いました。特に天球儀については、球体の上に星空が書いてあるわけですけど、本来、見上げた星空を、映しているので、バーチャルリアリティの技術を使って見上げられるような、コンテンツを作りました。はい。こんなことをやってきましたというので、内容は実はこの、記憶の宮殿に全部つながっているんですけれども、映像をご覧いただけなかったですけども、没入する仕組み、それから、鏡なりを使ったり、あるいは模型を使ったタンジブルユーザーインターフェース、あるいはマルチモーダルインターフェースと言いますけれども、こういうものを使って、新しいプロジェクトにトライしようとしています。リシュリュープロジェクトです。で、今、世の中、COVID の影響もあって、どんどんインターネットが3次元化していると、私たちは考えています。あつ森と呼ばれますが、集まれ動物の森という任天堂のゲームが、世界中で使われていて、バイデン大統領もこの中で選挙活動をやったりしています。それから Facebook が、ホライゾンワークルームスということで、これからはメタバースが彼らの主戦場になるというふうな発表をしています。そこで、私たちはここからですね、仮説を立てました。インターネット、今まで技術が追いついていないので、常に2次元の画面でしかなかったんですけれども、これが、バーチャルスペース、仮想空間化して、もっと広がってくるんではないかと。そうなると、人間が、ごめんなさい、インターネットが2次元だったので、人間が本来持っている能力が一つ使えなくなっていました。それがここに書いてある、空間認知、あるいは空間記憶という、能力です。人はその場所を記憶の手がかりとしているっていうのが、この考え方です。で、ここから、2つ実験をしています。一つは、文化財に集約されている知識に形を、3次元空間の中で形を与えると、人の考え方、見方みたいなものに新しい世界が広がるんじゃないかということです。もう一つは、仮想空間の中で記憶が強化できるということが分かっているんですけれども、それに加えて歩くとか触るとか音楽をそこに入れることによって、さらに強力な記憶の宮殿を作ることができるんじゃないかという仮説を立てました。まず、形を与えるということをやっています。これはですね、文化財をある、指標でキューブの中に押し込んで、立体的なものとして扱えるようにします。四角いキューブの、見る側面を変えるという行為を入れることで、その対象物に対して新しい見方が与えられるのではないか。このキューブの軸については、キューブの辺 キューブの3辺にそれぞれ自分の好きな指標を与えることができるので、自由にキューブを変更することができます。CEO とかわけのわからないことが出てますね。デモンストレーションのサイトがありますので、それをご覧いただきます。ローディングに少し時間がかかっていますが。
久永さん、今、パワーポイントが共有されてて、ウェブサイトは見れてないです。
ウェブサイトが見れてないですか。失礼しました。
You have to change the screen share to the browser.
ブラウザーに。スライドショーになった、ごめんなさい。ブラウザーになってないですね。
It has a little bit problem. I can't switch to the browser.
では、このままいきます。これは、後で、このリンクをシェアしますので、皆さんぜひ使ってみてください。はい。このキューブを使って人の認識がどう変わるのかというのを実験しています。左側が、後ろの風景が変わらずにキューブだけが回るバージョン。右側がキューブと一緒に背景も回るというバージョンです。微妙なのでちょっと分かりにくいですが、こんなインターフェースを作って、人にどういう影響を与えるのかっていうのを実験しています。左側よりも、左側は普通の3次元空間の中で、何か、物体が現れたりするとよくあるインターフェースですね。右側は自分が空間の中を動いているようなインターフェースになります。そうすると、右側のインターフェースの方が、空間操作といって、その新しい見方をするための能力が非常に向上するということが分かってきています。記憶についても、右側のインターフェースの方が、優勢になるというところまで来ています。まだ学会で発表できるところまでデータが取れていませんけれども、こんなところが分かりつつあります。形を作るというのが非常に大事だった。知識に形を作っていくと、新しい方法ができるかもしれないということですね。次が知識を、失礼しました。仮想空間の中で知識を強化できるかどうかということを、試しています。すでに記憶の宮殿を仮想空間の中に再現することで記憶を強化できるということは、報告されています。そこで私たちはさらにそれを強化するためにどんなことができるのかというのを、考えています。先に実現できているものの映像をご覧いただきます。これと CG の仮想空間の中をキャットウォークで、歩いていくっていうような、体験になりますが、 実際の人間はこんな風に非常に狭い一本の手すりを掴んで歩いています。で、それを使って右側にあるように CG の空間の大きな空間の中を歩いていきます。で、階段も実現します。にわかには信じがたいんですけれども、このリアルワールドで平地の中で回転しているだけで、映像を提供すると、人間は階段を上っているような錯覚を覚えます。これを使って非常に広い空間を移動する。ただ、リアルな空間はとても小さいままという体験を作り出します。リダイレクトウォークという名前がついています。リアルワールドでは8メートル ×2 メートルから2メートル ×3 メートルという、こういう空間を行ったり来たりするだけなんですけれども、右側にあるように大きな CG 空間の中を階段を上がりながら、鑑賞することができるというふうな仕組みです。この仕組みをベースにして、じゃあこれにさらに記憶を高める方法、あるいは、他に手がかりがあるのかというふうなことを試しています。画面に右側にあるように、意味のない図形を配置した仮想空間を作って、その中に一定の音が、一方向からある一定の場所から聞こえてくるというふうなものを作ると、ユーザーは非常に正確に位置情報を覚える。それからそれによって記憶の成績が良くなる。記憶の成績がいいものについては、好意を、寄せるようになる。つまり、私たちがブリティッシュミュージアムに行って、あそこにあったあの絵に対してすごく強烈な記憶を残すのに、そこにあった音情報っていうのも非常に大きな、寄与をしているということが分かってきています。これも今実験を繰り返して、他にどういう強化するものがあるのか、あるいはどれぐらい強化できるのかというふうなことを、実験しています。はい。で、まとめになりませんが、私の場合まとめになりませんが、最後に今回のテーマと私たちのやっていることっていうのは何かつながるだろうかっていうところで、簡単な文章を書きました。私たちも今、AI については様々な開発をしています。今はですね、たくさんの画像を AI に判断させて、分類用のタグを作るというふうなことをやっていますが、今の AI 君はですね、まだ、聖書とタブレットの区別がつきません。いつもタブレットがあるっていうタグを作ってくれますけれども、それを修正している毎日です。で、記憶の宮殿の研究についてですけれども、今まで記憶の宮殿っていうのは、人の能力任せ、人の頭の中で構築をして、その人が一人で使う個人所有のものだったんですけれども、3次元の技術を使って形を与えることができる。そうすると、シェアすることができるようになるということで、新たな記憶の共有という世界が見えてくるのではないかというふうに考えています。私からの発表は以上です。
Thank you very much. Lots of visual aid. I think we used AI translation. Some bit really struggling to understand, to be honest. So I think audience can pick up some ideas from his visual aid. And it's interesting to see like AI translation. It's dependent background database. Maybe this software designed for everyday conversation, not necessarily this type of stuff. So therefore pick up a lot of different kind of like a food or somebody's girl's name, stuff like that. So slightly tricky, but contents is really fascinating project. And Daini Home Printing and Mr. Hisanaga-san's team could be seen one of leading sort of sectors of digital archive. And some ideas strike me, such as seeing from a multiple side leads to thinking from multiple ways, and also multimodal stimulation, stimuli such as walking, touching, hearing sound in the virtual reality. This improves spatial cognition and spatial memory. That's really interesting. So many DNP's projects are based on the idea that there might be compatibility between human brain, body, and memory, cognition. So in introducing Kyushu University, the Professor Shigekazu Higuchi Sensei, the biotechnology and human engineering research projects as a kind of evidence back up their project. That's very fascinating stuff. Thank you very much. So we now move on the discussion time. Discussants, we invite the discussants to ask them to give us comments and their thoughts. So first, the discussant is Professor Shunya Yoshimi. He is a professor at the Interfaculty Initiative in Information Studies at the University of Tokyo. He has also saved lots of multiple sort of positions in the University of Tokyo, including Dean of the Graduate School of Interdisciplinary Information Studies, Vice President of the University of Tokyo. Currently, he is the Chairman of University of Tokyo Press. And he studied contemporary Japanese cultural history, everyday life, and cultural politics from the perspective of dramaturgy. So he studies topics including cultural studies, media studies, and urban sociology. He published lots of many books. Most recently, pick up some related to this seminar, Cultural Sociology in the Media Age, Invitation of Media Cultural Studies, and the Condition for Intellectual Creativity. And most recently published University and the Poverty of Time. Okay, so Professor Shunya Yoshimi, please take the microphone. Where is Shunya Yoshimi? I can't hear you. Shunya, maybe unmute, please. Shunya? Can you hear me, Professor Shunya Yoshimi?
He's now available.
Okay, that's great.
Okay, I'm sorry. Can you hear me? Great, I'm sorry. It's a mechanical problem. Okay, so thank you very much for introduction, and thank you very much. And I really, can you hear me? Okay, great. Thank you very much for three very different but very interesting presentation. I enjoyed a lot. So let me start from a very inspiring presentation by Professor Wolfgang Ernst. You, how to say, clearly shows the contrast between conventional archive and digital archive. And also you shows the difference, clearly shows the difference between digital so-called memory and human memory. I really agree. So first of all, let me, how to say, start what digital archive affect or change the conventional institutional archive or the other kind of the memory institution. I think there are three very strong impact on these memory institution. First, digital archive promote the convergence of all different type of memory institutions, including museum and conventional archive library, and so on. And it also expand the borderline of such kind of memory institution, because digital archive can include the different type of the, how to say, materials and the memories. For example, scenario of TV program and architecture plan and so on. And secondary, how to say, the digital archive also can include the remembering. They promote the remembering, not only the result of the process, but also the process itself. Usually, the museum correct the result of the artistic, how to say, the artistic performance, artistic process, or how to say, library preserve or correct the book which is published and at the end of the process. But digital archive also include the all the remembering process and the process in which the art work are producing. And also thirdly, digital archive also expand the archival horizon of remembering. It also include unconscious and corrective and unconscious level of remembering. It not only correct the document and the papers and also which was corrected in conventional archive, but it also can include any other kind of unconscious level of the practices, unconscious practices of all the people. So it is very true that the digital archive can expand the, how to say, and it can change a kind of the memory institution. But at the same time, I truly and deeply agree with Professor Wolfgang Ernst that he said, computer does not have memory. I think it's true. Computer cannot have memory. Of course, computer has storage of digital information, but it's different from the memorization and memory and remembering. So for example, nowadays, we are living in the age of information explosion. That's true. But information explosion is quite different from, for example, memory explosion. We cannot say that we are living in the age of memory explosion. So what is the difference? What is a memory and what is a collective memory, or how to say, memory? We are still need to discuss about what is intrinsic in the process of memorizing. Even if we are living in the age of we cannot forget, because in the crowd and in the internet and in the global digital sphere, every kind of the information about the past are reserved and somewhere. But it is a little bit different from memory. I think, as Professor Watanabe and your presentation shows clearly, that memory is something about your family, for example, or memory is something about historic moment like Hiroshima and Tokyo bombing, or how to say, the Holocaust in Germany and so on, or disaster. And also, memory is something about specific place. So memory is something different from the information in general. So we need to think more about that kind of difference. But at the same time, as Professor Ernst says, because of the digital expansion or digital technologies, our memory are now really changing and toward the more prospective than retrospective. In other words, we can as Professor Watanabe shows clearly also, the team of you clearly shows, how to say, we can be able to deform the memory more and more, colorizing and touching. And so all the practices, all of these practices is deformation of memory. So deformation of memory is closely, how to say, connected with deformation or reconstruction of history. This is an issue. This is a very important issue because how we can reconstruct, how we can reform the history. That is very, very serious question, I think. Of course, as Professor Watanabe shows, explained, we can reconstruct in some sense the history, our history, on the base of or according to the narrative of witness, or according to the historical documents. But at the same time, how to say, this reconstruction of history is always ideological, always contradictory, always in struggle. For example, we can think about the history or memory of the war. For example, in case of the Tokyo bombing in March 10 in 1945, there are many documents which was taken by American Air Force, as well as taken by Japanese photographer. There are many photographs, but photograph taken by American Air Force and the photograph taken by Japanese photograph on the street are completely different. So how we can construct what is correct, or how we can construct the history of Tokyo bombing in March 10 in 1945. Usually, such kind of the, how to say, the hegemonic memory often to be controlled by hegemonic power, because memory is always political and the memory is always ideological. So and often that's the kind of memory are often, how to say, controlled or manipulated by the political power, because the, how to say, the hegemonic sector has more documents, and institutionally that kind of memory can be strengthened or by all the institutions, memorial institutions. But I'm more interested in the collective memory of dead people, collective memory of how we can reformulate the collective memory of defeated people or colonized people or subverted people. So because that kind of memory, the reformation of such kind of memory is not easy for us. So so the DNP and whom I really collaborate with so long, these 5 or 6 years, and the DNP Dainion Printing Company has a wonderful technology. So my interest is how we can utilize such kind of wonderful technology, not for only for, how to say, the hegemonic memory, but also for the more, how to say, the dead people, defeated people, or colonized people, how we can manipulate, how we can appropriate such kind of technology for such for those kind of people, or for those, how to say, already lost and unconscious and unseen or and unable to read the memory which is unable to listen. So this is my interest. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. It's a really important point Professor Shunya Yoshimi made. Maybe we can discuss in the later open discussion continuously. And next discussant is Mike Featherstone. He's a professor of sociology at Goldsmiths University of London. He's founding editor of the journal Theory, Culture and Society, and the Theory, Culture, Society series Society book series. And he's editor-in-chief in the journal of Body and Society, author of Consumer Culture and Postmodernism, second edition just published 2007, and Undoing Culture, Globalization, Postmodernism and Identity. He's editor of over a dozen of books and also of numerous journal articles and the book chapter on social and cultural theory and consumer culture, globalization, aging, and the body. His book and article has been translated into 16 languages. Okay, Mike, please. Mike, unmute your phone, microphone.
Okay, so thank you very much. And let me just say in the first place how impressed I have been by all the speakers who give very different angles on this important topic. Let me just make some remarks. First of all, about Professor Ernst. I found his presentation very rich, and the contrast, as Professor Yoshimi mentioned, between the archive in the digital archive and the actual archive was very productive, and the sense in which there is a major difference in terms of the micro-temporalities and the impossibility to encounter the space or the language of the digital archive. All this, I think, is very insightful. I want to sort of take it in a slightly different direction to a little bit like Shunya Yoshimi was working across the archive and the digital archive. I like to think about this and think a little bit about the interface, not necessarily being the search box, which I'm going to come on to, but also being the body interface, which can touch things obviously in the real archive and open things up. So my sort of interest is really guided by work I'm doing on the scholarly apparatus, thinking how we academics actually produce material, how we write, how we teach through the digital archive. And it's a big sort of silent area. Not many people talk about it. I don't know how many people search through Google to get the material for their articles. I don't know how many people actually read books anymore. I mean, my colleague, Stuart Ewan, who Tomoko mentioned in the opening remarks, has a blog, and on his blog, he has photographs of his library, a little bit like looking at Shunya. Behind Shunya, you can see all the books. And he has a library in his office, and he works through a library. I assume he writes and takes notes, and then writes his articles, maybe on a computer, who knows. But we know very little about our scholarly practices, how we use the computer. Of course, the search box becomes an important device. I put a word in a search box, but that's incredibly constraining. I have to find the right word to work within the search box. So I want to think about the way we might have done this before in the library. You know, we worked in the library, and Foucault and Norbert Elias discovered very interesting angles and material by working on the diagonal, working across the material in the library by thinking and using imagination. I want to think how we can do this with the digital scholarly apparatus. And I think the search box is an impediment. It's a little bit to me like a letterbox, looking through the world from a letterbox. You can see a very constricted point of view of the world. How can we use the digital apparatus more imaginatively? And in looking at this, I came across an interview Wolfgang Ernst gave with Gert Loving in 2003, which is actually reprinted in his Digital Memory and Archive book. And it's very interesting, the question Gert Loving asked him, do you keep an archive yourself? and Wolfgang replied, nothing but an archive at home, no bookshelves, no library, but a modular system of textual, pictorial, and even auditory information in movable boxes, including fragments of books distributed according to diverse subjects, liberated from restrictive book covers. So you can see Wolfgang is embracing towards the digital because he wants to break up the books and pull out the chapters. And of course, that's easy to do with the digital. And we can, if we're bad, we can paste things together. And there's lots of companies now writing student essays through this mode if students aren't doing them themselves. So, so it interested me, his modus operandi, which was based upon cardboard boxes. Of course, cardboard boxes, you can touch them, you can smell them, you order them, you can visually see them in the room. There's a spatial location of the boxes. Was there a logic to where the boxes were? Was there a box which was unknown projects, half cooked material, as well as boxes labeled with common subjects? So my mind goes on this. And I also think of Walter Benjamin in this context with his Arcades project, where he had bundles of material, which some were like a theatre ticket or a tram ticket, handbills, photographs, lots of things from the consumer culture emerging in 19th century Paris. And he didn't want to put a narrative on them. It was the contiguity of the alphabet. The alphabet provide the separation, a device to in which he could throw things into the different boxes, and then he labeled the boxes with the material in them. So that seemed to me a very interesting sorting device. So I wonder how far we use classificatory and sorting devices within the digital system, or impose them on the digital system, which are not imminent to the micro temporalities, but are essentially imminent to scholarly apparatus, to our knowledge, to our way of working as academics. So, you know, Levi-Strauss said, myths are good to think with, right? Maybe cardboard boxes are good to think with, right? Well, I don't want to sort of offend Stuart Ewan and say, get rid of all your books and tear them up and put them in boxes with all sorts of other material, but maybe he might do that, I don't know. But digitally, we do this. You know, I have lots of files, lots of folders on different areas, and I throw things in, articles in, and I throw pastings from newspapers. I'm a bit of a magpie. I collect things in all these areas. But what I find is I rarely go back to these boxes and open them up because I can't see them clearly. All I can do is scroll down them. So a cardboard box of diverse material, visually, tactilely, you can encounter through your body interface and make an immediate mapping and quicker encounter with it. So that was an interesting question to me. And the final rider on that question is, I like the remark by Professor Ernst about heterotopias, that we might, in the end, just have a few islands of heterotopias. That is, the previous archive, all the material in the museums might be sent to an island, a little bit like Jurassic Park. You know, all the dinosaurs are put together. And I sort of wonder if there's an island for the academics in the future. You know, the academics can go on an island and curate, along with the museum people, the existing hardware, the material, and write by hand and do things they want to do in this way. but it's completely irrelevant because the archive, as Professor Ernst said, isn't an archive. It's an immediacy. It's something that is there in a fluent dynamic for immediate use. And if you look at platform capitalism, the whole platforms which have developed, they're in use in an immediacy rather than in an archiving of people going back and looking at previous posts. So again, that was an interesting thing. So how will this new digital computing format impact on academic scholarship and the scholarly apparatus in the future? Having said that, I very much enjoyed the presentations of Professor Watanabe and Ms. Niwata. I found this really very interesting, the process. And it made me think back to my childhood when my uncle had a set of colored inks coloring photographs. He wasn't very good, nothing like the AI capacity. And of course, there was recently the series, maybe 10 years ago, by the BBC on the World War in color. Some of it was original film, and some of it was actually colored. So the power of color really interests me. And I think what came across was the way the presenters felt this change in people. They felt this change themselves, but the sort of affective charge it gave people on seeing the colored version was very hard to imagine before I'd heard. I didn't think it would be so powerful because I think there is a black and white aesthetic. We think of Atget's photographs of Paris, wonderful black and white cityscapes. They're powerful in themselves. I couldn't imagine coloring him. He's a photographer artist. So some sides are a sort of sacred maybe, or they're in the art, but other sides maybe are more memory devices. So I think this is what came across to me. And it was a memory aid or a memory device designed to stimulate discussion, stimulate memories through discussion. It wasn't just the person by himself, it was a collective interaction, and it would be effective. It would be, the photograph was there in the hand, people were talking, passing around, thinking, maybe there was a computer there as well. So it was a whole multimodal experience. And I found this very interesting, and a sort of democratization in a way of the production of the image, which I think is very interesting. But I do very much go along with Professor Yoshimi's remarks about who, when, what, how were the images developed, who had the power to commission them and censor them, etc., etc. So I think that is a very important rider. Finally, I think I also enjoyed a great deal Professor Hisanaga's presentation, and it sort of interested me, the typology. We think of Stiegler, we think of exteriorization and memory apparatus, retentive apparatus, and a sort of evolution. You know, and you think of an evolution, black and white photos, color photos, maybe stereoscopic photographs, moving photos, images, movies, and then maybe virtual reality. We're sort of on the way. Do we, when we get to virtual reality, throw away all the other ones, or all the other ones become only visible within virtual reality is a question. Or do we have another island, another heterotopia, where we put all these older forms? Is an interesting question that occurs to me. But I think the immersive capacities of virtual reality and the way in which the Richelieu Renaissance project at the French Library and the Louvre and the three-dimensional images you can see from many sides. I think I found this very interesting technically and imaginatively. So I think there's a lot of interesting potential in these areas. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Very rich comments and very fascinating, interesting question from discussion. So I want to open the discussion, all of our participants. Maybe I can ask you, Professor Ernst, maybe start with you first. Maybe you can ask, you can answer about cardboard filing system from Professor Mike Featherstone. Please.
Yes. Well, thank you both to Professor Yoshimi and Professor Featherstone for your very inspiring feedback. To immediately answer to the proposal by Mike Featherstone that the card boxes are good to think with. This is actually the core of my idea of technologos, that human thought cannot be reduced just to the cognitive mind only, but is coupled to materialities. And this materiality of the card boxes is a co-agency of thinking. So thinking is not human versus an artificial memory, but what we call thinking co-emerges with materialized practices, which is very much, of course, the extended mind theory. But when it comes to memory, then we should not exactly reproduce the old saying of there is a human memory and there is external memory, but memory is always something artificial and external already from the beginning. So I want to get rid from the dichotomy. I just thought of concerning the card box, Vannevar Bush, the famous Vannevar Bush, who not only invented an analog computer, but had at the Second World War tech sciences for war use. Then there was peace, and then he invented his famous Memex machine, which is the desktop metaphor, which we now have on the computer as an interface. He said, we need a memory, a card box memory on microfilm, which is dynamic, which we can roll, unroll, annotate, link. This was the first material hyperlink system. So this was a dynamic card box system, which is the invention of what we now call hypertext and hypermedia. So I think Mike Featherstone has media archaeologically actually reminded of one of the core agencies of our computer search agencies. Our scholarly practice is a subject of our talk as much as our digital workshop with all its AI translation of Japanese language, all of the difficulties in connecting to each others. This is already part of this new experience of how humans are already, how the media are co-thinking with us. This is happening now at this very moment. Just one sentence to Professor Yoshimi. I very much like your proposal that what is happening now is an information of memory. This is actually a very good, an informatization of memory is taking place, because we should not maybe forget that human memory, I don't know what neurobiologists say. If human memory has colors, do you dream in colors? That's a question to the neurobiologist. But I would defend the black and white photography against the colored photography in one sense, because the black and white, as Mike Featherstone said as well, creates a distance. We should never confuse an optochemical photograph with a human being. If we color it, we suddenly have emotional relation. Our affective apparatus treats it as more human, defreezes it. But this is a betrayal. This is a betrayal. This pretends to make something alive which is dead. We should never confuse a storage medium with a human being. And that is why I would like to defend black and white, and even turn nowadays colorful images. We should have our conference maybe in black and white, because then we are reminded that we are in a distance. I'm not looking at you personally now. I look at a computer screen, and you have been sampled, digitized, algorithmicized, compressed, decompressed. So if you were now black and white, then I would be reminded that telecommunication is not a dialogue, which again refers to the scholarly practice, which Mike Featherstone reminded us of. So media archaeology tries to create a distance, which is so important for critical reflection. Thank you.
That's very interesting. Maybe Watanabe Sensei, and Andrew, maybe can talk a little bit about what you think about Ernst's comment on your sort of project.
Okay, thank you for your comments. And so Professor Yoshimi pointed out a very important issue. So I'd like to answer. So as I show you, so I am categorizing mainly public domain photographs, always by United States Army and so on. So when I work, I try to refer not only personal eyewitness accounts, but also scientific facts of colors. For example, I colorized a photo of the atomic bomb mushroom cloud I show. So based on its chemical components, this method can be a way to move away from ideology. Not only eyewitness, but also scientific facts. So, and people, especially social network users, have an appreciative eye to filter out ideologies nowadays. They know many, many things. So I speculated that we should not be afraid of colorization. And on the other hand, the fact that photographs of war have been taken with a bias of particular ideologies may be just a part of the history. And so, and also colors photographs from personal collection based on the memories of their owners. There is hopefully so no conflict of ideology between countries or governments. For both of us, so colorization is a method to create flow or reboot memories and to inherit memories, not a purpose. Colorization is not a purpose itself. Furthermore, I think it is important that Anju is working domestically in Hiroshima as a young person born in Hiroshima who has a mission inside of inheriting memories of atomic bombing. And she is the subject of the inheritance of memories in near future. It is very important point. And so if you have some comments, Ange, please give us.
Thank you for giving us the warmest comments from Yoshimi Sensei and Mike Sensei. I think black and white photos show the reality at that time and include many information at the time. So in colorizing, we cannot change the reality at that time, but by colorizing and dialoguing with the subject in the photos, we can bring out precious memories in the photos. So I think these points are important to think the differences between colorized photos and black and white photos. So I think the colors, I think both monochrome photographs and colors photographs are very important for us to think about peace or war or our future. But by inheriting the thoughts and memories of war survivors into the future with empathy, not tragedy, not the miserably or tragedy of war, not only the tragedy or miserably aspects of war, but also the peaceful or ordinary lives in pre-war and wartime are very important and universal. So I think the colorized photos are inherited the thoughts and memories of war survivors into the future.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Andre. Yeah, that's really great. Right. Yes, so that's very interesting about I just share, so I shouldn't talk, but just one thing is I was thinking about. So when I talked about the opening remarks, Rob Shields talks about it's actual but not real. So therefore, I was thinking about it's okay. So through dialogue between survivors and the sort of past document, the scientific data-based accuracy of colors may be important as a kind of sort of historical fact, if you like. But more like, when people talked about your stories, your life, it's just, the people always reinterpreting your life story. So therefore, when you talk to people, maybe when, talking is different sort of apparatus. So through talking, maybe they try to reconstruct their memory too. But that's why I'm just thinking perhaps more important, not just real or accuracy of color, how this is actual, create actual feeling to people. So that's why I think coloring, I think I agree, Ernst, Professor Ernst, reality or fact, black, white photograph. Yes, this is the reality. This comes from the past. So therefore, this is clearly real things. But at the same time, I think if you sort of generate people's emotion, which AI can't create emotion, Ernst said, but coloring works. I think I believe this. Yes. Okay. So
something?
yeah, Ernst. Yeah.
Can I ask something to Anyo Niwata, who just presented? Why is it that you are talking about rebooting the memories? You defended the human aspect of memorization, narrativizing through colorization, but at the same time, you're proudly in your project, you speak of rebooting memories. Rebooting is the most brutal, machinic, technical term. So how can it be that you use?
So I decided this English title, reboot. But so original Japanese is 記憶の回答, defrost. Defrost. So freeze all the memories can be.
Okay, that's
defrost.
Yeah,
colors.
Much better. Yes. Okay.
We should change English title.
Yes. Yeah, fantastic. So I think final sort of, we're just getting time is running out. But if you want to sort of, give us comments, last comment, anyone, what about Yoshimi Sensei? Sort of your comment as a whole of
thank you very much. Very, very interesting discussion. So let me do the comment of two things. One is first, nowadays in these 2 years under the COVID-19 pandemic, we always every day we are ordered to keep social distance everywhere, and but when we are ordered to keep social distance, at the same time, in such a moment, we always want to connect, want to close, or want to interface, or interact with someone. So distance is, I think, very different from separation or seclusion, because distance include two different, how to say, the vector, two different movement. One is, how to say, separating, but at the same time, the other is closing. So connecting. So and memory, or the practice of memory or memorization include, I think, something similar, because when we try to remember something, we want to keep, on the one hand, distance, or on the one hand, that's a temporal distance from past and present. But at the same time, as Professor Watanabe and Anju-san showed, that this memorization practices include as a connection, closeness, and familiarizing. So both is important. So some kind of sometimes distanciation is more important. Sometimes closeness and connection and familiarization might be more important. So always we can be, how to say, socially contextualize our practice of memory in our own, how to say, for each purposes. So this is first comment. And second comment is because Professor Ernst, how to say, wrote in his abstract about chronotope by Mikhail Bakhtin. And I like Bakhtin too. So, Professor Stone mentioned about heterotopia. So, in relation with chronotope, we often also discuss about heteroglossia and polyphony by Mikhail Bakhtin. So heteroglossia includes the interaction and the overlap between different sphere and different time and different, how to say, word, or different, how to say, different classification or different category, cross and overlap. So maybe to say the one of the other, how to say, the digital archiving, one of the possibility of digitalization of our memory. We can think about how we can promote, I'm not so sure, how we can find out such kind of the possibility of overlap, or a possibility of the interact between different kind of the memory practices. How to say, based under the by the insight, wonderful insight by Mikhail Bakhtin's wonderful books, including the Carnivalesque, the Dostoevsky and the Carnival and so on. So this is second comment.
Professor Yoshimi, can I ask back? It was interesting how you say we. You mean humans? We. Us. Yeah, we.
We.
You mean? I think you mean the humans. But isn't it our situation, even this conference now, that the we is now the humans and the machines, and this is another we, isn't it?
Yeah, you're right. But if we can include machine, and within the machine, we also can include sometimes, how to say, human, because I cannot explain well in English, but anyway, basically, the human beings itself, or our collectiveness itself, is now in question. So, but we're thinking about how to say, because you're right that we also need to think about at the same time how to say. We can include the interaction between the machine and machine with machine, but at the same time, how to say, at the same time, I think we itself, or the interaction between the human and the machine itself, include the, how to say, the historical time range or historical trajectory, as well as I still insist on the some kind of the political how to say, so moment within that kind of interaction. Tamari-san.
Yeah, okay.
You-
Sorry,
you-
time is now really running out. So maybe Mike just quickly wrap up. I just like very much the remarks about distance and distanciation. It's an interesting medium because we're distance but together, but it's slightly uncanny. And I think the way there are glitches and slight delays are very different than the embodied face-to-face temporality where we're observing things in the same space. But distanciation is also an aesthetic capacity. And we were talking about some Atget's black and white photographs having a certain aesthetic. So distanciation is sort of counterposed to the intimacy of aesthesis, of sort of immediate sensory involvement, the raw material out of which an aesthetic experience might be distilled. So that's more immersive, near the virtual reality, near the embodied feeling. So we're trying to somehow mimic that within the technology. So distanciation, immersion, but then Shunya talked about rewriting as well, the constant rewriting. So there are different sort of aesthetic moments occurring within this medium, which are very interesting. And finally, the remarks of Professor Ernst about we're hybrid, effectively. We're using both, yeah? And this will potentially develop new sensory modalities, or the senses will move in different directions as well. Thank you. Thank you. Right, okay, so we just need to wrap up. We can see so AI computational technology is, understand very differently and applied in very different ways by theorists to cultural practitioners, like Anje activists, like sociologists, like me and Mike Featherstone. So what suggests is that the AI is a sort of multi-faced entity to be discussed, and which has been deeply integrated our sort of way of seeing or way of thinking, of the world. So what's the matter of the fact is that we are with AI, so integrated machine and human world we live. So we hope this event helps to work as a launchpad for thinking about AI and society. And then very much, we'd like to very much keep our discussion with you. So just the information next. The next webinar seminar, AI and Society, will be Robotics and Embodiment in February 18th, 2022. So next year, the third seminar focuses on robotics. We will explore the significance of materiality of the body. We talked about the body a lot today in relationship between biology, AI, and embodied knowledge. So the detail of the event will be announced in the due course. And finally, thank you so much, Professor Wolfgang Ernst,
Professor Hidenori Watanabe, and Miss Anju Niwata, and Mr. Ichiro Hisanaga, Professor Shunya Yoshimi, and Professor Mike Featherstone for participating in the event. Thank you very much.
And
So I'd like to thank you also, Director of Institute of Creative Cultural Entrepreneurship, Gerald Riddstone, and administrators, and Mina from Theory, Culture and Society. That's all today. So thank you for joining
thank you
us,
very much.
and looking forward to seeing you again next year, February 18th. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Bye bye.